Thank you, Alfredo. And I want to thank very much Dr. Fayoli for being here today and giving us that introduction that for me was so enriching of his life in a certain way. And also, of course, of Elena and Sixto that have before me. But I would like to say something that, I mean, it's convenient to say because we're speaking here about where do we come from. And I also want to mention that I was born in Cuba and that I fought Mr. Castro and that I went to jail. And in jail I was 15 years. But something that we should know is that I don't consider that something that bad that happened to me, but something good because I had the possibility at that time of studying the Vatican Council, Mater Magistra, Pacem in Terris, living through that history. And I love history. I'm an attorney, but I love history. And I love what Massimo said about his history, his personal history, where he was coming from. And because of that, I would start mentioning, looking at the signs of the times. And this is very important because of what's happening in the United States. We're in the United States, we're US citizens. I'm a US citizen by birth because my grandfather was born in Georgia. So what I would like to say is that we are at the moment in which probably today we'll know about a new president in the United States. As Fayoli was mentioning, the events that have taken place recently, and of course we're all waiting for the final proclamation. And as he mentioned, this is going to be the second Catholic president of the United States, which is very important. Of course, there have been priests that have said that Mr. Biden is not a Catholic and all that, but this, of course, is, by speaking clearly, is a little bit of bullshit. But my presentation is related to the 6th chapter of the book of Massimo. And in this chapter, I start with what he says about the disruption of globalization that we have seen because of the Trump administration with Brexit, the pseudo-dictators that appeared in Eastern Europe like Hungary, Poland, and Turkey today. And all that situation is what he calls the disruption of globalization. But of course, I would like to mention something that I mentioned in my presentation in Miami, which is we are followers of Jesus Christ that said at the end, go to the ends of the earth and preach the gospel. So for us, we have been universal always. We are always universal. And now came this new name, as Fayoli was mentioning, we have mentioned this universal, global. Jordan mentioned the noosphere. So we have different ways to look at this that's coming out now, really, especially after 1989, when the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc was finished and a little afterwards the Soviet Union ended. And then we had a whole world, which was global. And then things started to happen. Today we have a global world that is in disruption. And it's in disruption because of what I just mentioned before. And remember, when Pope Francis went outside of Rome for the first time, he went to Lampedusa. And there he spoke about the indifference, the globalization of indifference. Okay, globalization of indifference. That's something that he called immediately. On the contrary, John Paul II in 1998 had called for the globalization of solidarity. But that really wasn't happening in 2013. We had the globalization of indifference. So then, well, I have a question that I would like to mention. which is for this, Alfredo.
Yes, sir.
Change the slides.
Change the slide, Alfredo.
Yeah, I'm trying. It doesn't seem to be working. Let me see what's going on. Seems to be stuck. There you go. Okay.
This is the first, what I was speaking about just a minute ago. The question is, what do you think is the impact of Pope Francis' vision due to the fact that he is, no, go back again. No,
Let me get back to
the next one.
that it? Next one? Okay.
That one. The question. What do you think is the impact of Pope Francis' vision due to the fact that he has lived in 3 different worlds? Son of an Italian immigrant in Argentina, as a Jesuit priest, and as a pope. But we could leave this question for the end, better, Alfredo, so that we can continue. Okay. The worldview of Pope Francis, a response to the crisis of globalization. What is the response of Pope Francis to this? We have a new sense of global Catholicism. In response to the disruption of globalization, the worldview is a response that we mentioned already. So you can please change the slide. Change it. Change it again. Okay. A new sense of global Catholicism. That's what we are going to speak about now. Only a truly open way of thinking can understand the crisis and where our world is going. Introduce Catholics in the West to a global imagination, turning to the southern part of the world. I was struck by what Mr. Fagioli Massimo said in regards to the catching up of the Catholic Church with the end of colonialism, that we have been catching up for, of a late 100 years. And that's why right now he's speaking about the Western world, the Southern world. The Southern world is part of our imagination now. And for example, one thing that I consider very important is that the life of ecumenism, he calls it the ecumenism of blood instead of the ecumenism of life. Ecumenism of blood because there have been martyrs of Catholics in different parts of the world, especially in the southern part of the world, that have been given their lives together with other people that are not even Catholics. But that's what he calls the ecumenism of blood instead of the ecumenism of life. That is what we have been speaking about here in the United States. So Francis has called for reconciliation at a global scale. The church is an instrument of reconciliation, and he has made many actions because his words go together with actions. And he has made many actions in the sense of reconciliation, in the sense of trying to fix situations in the world. For example, situation in Kenya, Uganda, Central Africa, Bosnia and Herzegovina. He has been mediator in those things. The case of Cuba, specifically the disruption of the relations between Cuba and the United States. He was an intermediate for that. When he came here to the United States, he had gone to Cuba before. The reconciliation in Colombia, for example, in which he tried to reconcile the guerrillas with the government. So he has, in Bolivia and Paraguay, he has tried to reconcile situations in the world that were very dramatic and difficult. Please put the next. Alfredo.
Yeah, that's the next one.
Okay, the Jubilee of Mercy, 2006. No, you passed it.
There you go.
Okay, the Jubilee of Mercy, 2016. The church as a field hospital in the midst of a wonder world, something that he has mentioned many times. And with his example, as Massimo was saying in Rome, he has not gone to the places where normally other popes have gone. He has gone to the prisons and the places of the sick, etc. In the global ecumenism, also very important, he signed an agreement with the granny man Al-Tajeb in Abu Dhabi in February 2019. This was a great act between him and the Imam that had a lot of information, but I don't see here in the United States really that received so much publicity. Also, he went to Sweden to learn in the 50th anniversary of the Reformation, the day that Luther actually proclaimed the thesis, putting it in the door. So those are examples of his activities as a global reconciler, and he has done that in many ways. Let's change the. Then I have a question, and we'll have it at the end. What impact will global Catholicism have in the Church of the United States? And actually, this is not a new question because we have been speaking about this all the time since the beginning when Massimo spoke, and now Sixto spoke about that specifically. So that's something that we can continue speaking about. Okay. I would like to mention something that I told Massimo at the beginning when we were speaking, when he came in, that Fratelli Tutti came out 3 weeks ago, 1 month ago. And Fratelli Tutti is the last encyclica of Pope Francis that actually confirms in many ways what Massimo had said in his book. That is something very interesting. And that happened very recently. I haven't mentioned it here, something part of my presentation, but I want to mention it personally because Fratelli Tutti gives us a lot of ideas about how this reconciliation in the world will be going forward. Defense of human rights, save politics from positivistic technocracy, primacy of politics for the common good, danger for democracy and technology. We have to think that now the papacy is really the big luminous place in the world speaking about human rights and the whole situation of human rights in the world. And that's something that never has happened. Well, has happened before, and I'll mention that at the end, the difference between the Ostpolitik and the situation that we have today. Okay, next. Okay, the question here was, do you think global organizations will be able to control international corporations in order to make our world a more just place? Have the next one. That's a question. Okay. This is very important, and this goes directly to the present moment that we're living in. So I want to stop here and make you, meditate a little bit on this. The difference between the church and Ostpolitik in the 1960s and 1980s is that the challenges against the message of democracy and human rights no longer come from the communist bloc. Remember, in the 60s and the 70s, the communist bloc was constantly attacking the church because of its position in regard to human rights. That's something that John Paul II was the master. Remember the Ostpolitik position of the church started after the Vatican Council with Paul VI and continued especially with John Paul II, which was a key element for the end of the not the Roman Empire, the Communist Empire, because of solidarity and all what happened in Poland. That was, let's say, the promoter of the whole situation that ended the communist world, the communist bloc. So, but now, even when Pope Francis is doing the same thing in the sense of promoting human rights in all the world, in Latin America, in Europe, he's been attacked. And where has he been attacked? He's been attacked here in the United States. Attacks against Pope Francis, not knowing really what they were talking about. And I don't want to speak about the elections that just took place, but anyway, you can foresee what I'm mentioning. The fact that Pope Francis has been on the attack in regards to human rights, the way of the Catholic Church Universal has been very much misunderstood here in the United States. So, let me see the next Alfredo. Okay. This will be my last question to you. Why has it been so difficult for the church in the United States to deal with Pope Francis? Of course, part of this question has been answered already because we have been doing since the beginning. But anyway, there could be more questions about this. Okay, Alfredo. These are the 4 questions that I'm presenting to you. If anybody wants to make a question, please.
Yeah, I don't have any hands up yet. Elena, you know.
Unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself.
Cuidando el asiento.
Who? I don't see any hands.
Quítate la pregunta muy rápido.
If I can see the slide with the questions again.
Sure.
Is it possible?
Mhm.
Or ask a
Correcto.
Go to the last one.
Right. Okay. But I could say something on the first question.
Go ahead.
So here, I believe that all popes of the previous century have embodied a symbol of the church of their times. So Paul VI was an intellectual, and that was the age of Catholic action, of Christian democratic parties, and so on. John Paul II embodied the church, fighting against communism. Pope Benedict embodies a certain regret of conservative Catholicism for Vatican II, and opening. And so here Pope Francis embodies our time as a son of immigrants. And so he's a symbol of that. And so it's not something that he has to think about too much. It's him. So on his being Jesuit, so as we all know, Pope Francis had complicated relations with the Society of Jesus, and maybe he still has, but we don't know that because, so they don't talk about that now.
Mhm.
But certainly a big asset for him in understanding the global comes from being a Jesuit. And so this is very important. So here there is an openness of mind and an openness cultural to the world that very few in the Catholic Church has in the same degree that Jesuits have. So this is a very, very important asset. So in some sense, I think it's a sign of God's plan that this opening of Catholicism to the global takes place through and thanks to a Jesuit. It's not an accident, I think. So it's typical of the religious orders more than diocesan structures, bishops, and so on, but particularly of the Jesuits that have a unique history of dealing with the peripheries, the other cultures is much more intense, much more extreme, and much older and much more sustained than Franciscans or Dominicans. Or so the question is, how will be able this church to continue without a Jesuit pope? I mean, this is the question, because so I see a vast difference between the average Jesuit now and the average priest. The average Jesuit bishop, cardinal, and the average bishop, cardinal. And so there is a difference. And so this is, it is incredibly fascinating to see this input of Francis. And we don't know what's after, but I'm enjoying very much this now.
At this point, we can be flexible and use the time anywhere we want. Anybody can make a remark or raise your hand if you want to say anything further. Let me try to get back to the.
Alfredo, Elena Muñoz has a comment. And I have my hand raised also.
Okay, Lena, let me get.
Yeah, I really am very, like I was before Ruth Bader Ginsburg, before she died, that I was so afraid that she would die because we knew what was going to happen. I'm so afraid. I'm praying to God that to give a long life to Pope Francis, because we cannot go back to other kind of popes, because the spirit that Pope Francis had brought to the church is unparalleled to me. I mean, I admire other popes, John 23rd and all that, but to me, since the very beginning, with the symbol that he gave when he was he became Pope, the first appearance, his simplicity, his humility, asking for prayer and all that. But as you mentioned, Professor, when he went to Lampedusa, that really did it to me. When he said we had lost the capacity to cry, the indifference that we have, that really, this is the power we've been waiting for. And I think that, in the question that Tony put, I think that his experience being a Italian, Argentinian, being a Jesuit and all that, has given him such a global, to put it in some word, that he has a great relationship with God. That's beside the point. But this experience, this global experience that he has, been an asset to our church. And I wish, I pray to God that it lasts forever. Thank you.
Elena Sixto, you wanted to say something?
Yes, just two things. First of all, I'm addressing what Elena just said. Yeah, people are beginning to speculate about Francis's successor. I mean, he's 80, he will be 84 in December, and I wish him many, many more years of active pontificate, but eventually successor will come. And I feel that there are certain things of the many that Pope Francis has done and called for that can be undone only at the expense of running the church into the ground of irrelevance. I mean, the very question of globalization of the church, his call for challenging the structures, the institutional structures that perpetuate poverty, going beyond a mere almsgiving. Again, his real and very substantial rehabilitation, if you will, perception of the role of the, not rehabilitation, but the singling out his creative vision of the laity as collaborating in the way of synodality and others, is his successor, whoever that may be, will undo them only at the expense of really reducing the church, to a very actively small community and quite irrelevant to the problems of the time. The other thing is, to what extent can global Catholicism affect the Catholic community in the United States? And I believe that it will affect it to the extent that it is allowed to enter into dialogue with this local church, which, as I said before, quoting actually from an article that I read earlier in the runs the risk of becoming isolated, a ghetto, if you will, angry and ultra-conservative, and resisting any sense of change, any sense of openness to new horizons of the meaning, new horizons of evangelization, of the meaning of church, of dialogue with the international church communities and so on. But to that extent, there are bishops here. I mean, we know them. I mean, Cardinal Tobin, Bishop Cupish, the Bishop of San Diego, and others, and communities that are engaged and committed in basically pursuing Pope Francis's vision. And to me, that a sense of hope. Also, the Latino community. I mean, I don't want to sound biased in that sense, since I belong to it, but the Latino community is increasing, and it will become a very large part and proportion of American Catholicism in the near future. That's all.
Dr. Faioli, since we're coming short of time, we would just like to see if you're interested in giving a conclusion statement, and then we can continue after that, but we don't want to detain you any longer than we have.
So at noon I have to go, but I see that there's a question that I think Ramon wanted to ask. Is that right? Because I don't have much to say, honestly, so I'm happy to hear, to listen.
Okay, Ramon, did you have a question? Ramon Machado?
Yes. Well, it's really a comment. It's really a comment on the last question that Tony Garcia Creus elicited, and it's very simple. It's just a very personal comment as to why is the church so reluctant in this country to open up to the openness of Francis' message. And I think it's fear of losing control. That's just I don't think it's bad will, but it's just rooted in a honest fear of losing control. That's all my only comment.
Raise your hand.
Dr. Faioli, anything you
I think Elena had something to say, but she's.
Wants to say something.
Elena Muñoz or Elena?
Elena, my Elena.
García.
Okay, go ahead.
I have to share the screen with Sixto, otherwise it creates
Sure.
feedback. I just want to, there is some comments that have led me to this comment that I'm going to make. Barbara's idea of forming a study group, and also the suggestion or the question about how are we going to reach the younger generation. One thing that came to my mind right away, and we have talked about it, Tony has been talking about Fratelli Tutti. I think it's a document that would probably be of interest to young people, but he talks about social media so much, and our young people live on social media. And I think that they will identify with what Pope Francis is saying. That's only one point that I'm going to make. So I suggest Fratelli Tutti as a starting point. The other thing I wanted to share with you is an experience I had in my own parish. We have a Cuban priest that celebrates Mass for our Hispanic community. And about 3 Sundays ago, he shared segments of Fratelli Tutti during different parts of the church. He had his iPhone with him, and he told the congregation that he was not being distracted by the iPhone, but he was going to share sayings from the Pope's encyclical. And to me, it was a most inspiring liturgy. Then I talked to him later, and he told me that the quotations that he had been sent to him by a priest in Cuba. So, and he sent me, it's actually cartoon types where you have Pope Francis saying little things, and this is coming from the church in Cuba. So I thought how interesting that the word of Pope Francis is being conveyed to us here in the United States by a church that we don't consider as being so highly developed. It's a way that we can cooperate. That's all that I wanted to say.
Thank you, Elena. Anything else?
I wonder if Elena could forward that to all of us.
The thing is, it's all in Spanish, but I can forward to you the things. It's all in Spanish.
That won't help me.
Yes. But you can see the way that they draw Pope Francis is really nice. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Dr. Faioli, we're...
Yeah, so I just want to conclude by thank you, and also by sharing this. Having met with you when you came at Villanova for the Pope Francis Conference 2018, and then Miami last year, and so this time, so this is really a very important window for me in a Catholic Church in the US, which is going to take over the Anglo-white Catholic Church in this country. And so this is happening, and it's not that far away. Well, it has happened already in many local places. So here, I believe that, so there is a fair amount of criticism that we need to move to a certain kind of clerical mentality and so on. But in some sense, that is the past. And so here, I believe that there is enormous potential in the future of a diverse Catholicism in all areas, in parish structure, diocesan structures, in Catholic schools, Catholic colleges. And so that's, I mean, that has taught a lot to me. And so if there is one way to make the Catholic Church in the United States more global, meaning more Catholic, it's because of the new face of the Catholic Church that is represented here much more than in other places. And so here, I don't know operationally what to suggest, but your institute is a great example because it seems to me that is in a good relations with the local church without being enslaved to it, without being subject to your ordinary, and this is the way to go. This is how it should be. I'm sure that, I mean, your institute to be built, it took a lot of time, a lot of energy, money, patience, and so on. And this is what is in the future of the Catholic Church. A lot is going to be not there anymore. So those huge seminaries, huge things, they're not going to be there anymore, but other things will be there. And this is, so the Pedro Lupe Institute is one in very important example to me about the future of the Catholic Church in the United States.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I want to say something. Can I say something?
Joaquin, yeah, go ahead.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just want to inform you that Associated Press just said that the new president of the United States is Joe Biden.
That's on everything.
So that's the news.
Yeah, I put it in the chat. I put it in the chat.
Joaquin, would you like to say something in parting? Joaquin, our director, and without you wouldn't be able to do anything.
On behalf of the Institute, we are flattered because of your words. We're trying to do exactly what you're telling us to do. We want to be a bridge that can help in building the strongest church of the United States. And you have been a very big help, always there and accepting our invitations. So I thank you very much, and I thank our peers that tried to explain, your book. And we will be together. This is a long road. Thank you so much.